Flowing in the same direction, and I thank all of those who send these messages. The thing to what to do from where we've arrived is to acknowledge what the problem is. Like doctors would do, diagnosis, correct diagnosis that will then lead to, a viable prescription and a treatment that will work in that order. What is it that is wrong with Nigeria? Or are we still arguing whether Nigeria is sick or not when we have become the case study for failed state amongst the leading researchers in the world, when we have become the poverty capital of the world with 3 million barrels of crude oil that's sold every day, right, and all the potentials that have remained potential since the beginning, today getting worse. And we will recall that some 20-30 years into that experiment of Lugard in 1914, those who who had to take over that management of that Nigeria from the British that were managing it, had no confidence at all in the union that had been put together. It was Ahmadu Bello that said it was the mistake of 1914. Then Awolowo had cause to say that it was a mere geographical expression. Have we, from all of what has happened so far, has that geographical expression become anything but that geographical expression? Have we gone beyond being the mistake of 1914? If you see the blood flow in the land and all of what Nigeria has become a disputed project. The people who are supposed to imagine on a construction site where you have more than 70%, you have 100 people on the construction site, and 70-75 of them are not interested in building as you want. They are disputing the ownership of the land, and whatever you try to put together, they come to knock it down.
Is it in tandem with what?
So they answer than most of the other people. What we need to do is to look at what South Africa did with the apartheid constitution, because there's no difference between what they resolved in apartheid South Africa and what we have to resolve now. The only difference is that in South Africa was the Boers dealing with the rest of the blacks, the owners of the land. Right. In Nigeria is the Fulani and their British, sponsors who have brought the rest of the owners of Nigeria to servitude and found a way to put a constitution that makes it permanent. And we're saying the owners of Nigeria have come to the point where they insist that their right to determine for themselves how they live in their land will have to be respected. And what some of us who have been involved in this discussion for quite a while, not just sitting in our houses and discussing, we've come to the point where we brought the owners of Nigeria to come to this. I'm sure you heard about Pronaco, where we had ethnic delegations from across Nigeria. There's no ethnic group that was left out. And we asked them the two questions of whether, like Bola Ige wanted, at the time they were talking about Sovereign National Conference many years ago, that the first question should be, do we want to continue in this union? If we find answer to that, which only a referendum can resolve for many of the groups, then we go to the second one of on what terms. How do we do that today? If we accept that we have not made a constitution, because the constitutions we made were toppled and replaced by impositions, we have not agreed on being in the union, going by that reality. The first question would then become, how do we come to where we begin that discussion in earnest? If anybody thinks it is by going to National Assembly to make amendments, let me tell you who will be making the amendments. The 36 states that came to now become the federating units already created a lopsided situation. From a region, from a federation of 3 regions that became 4, we now have 36 states. And if there are 3 senators from each of the states, when you go to the place of decision making, with all those things created by brigandage and decrees have now become the law we must abide with. Incidentally, I'm a lawyer of 26 years with specialty in jurisprudence. If there's any lawyer in this land, whether it's senior advocate or junior advocate or whatever, professor of law, that tells you that it is the National Assembly that will undertake this reconstruction of the Constitution, that lawyer is either ignorant or dishonest. he doesn't know what he's saying.